So thank you, all the organizers, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the confluence of data science, sustainability, and ethics. I'm Indrajit, work for Genpact, as Parvati mentioned, and today I'm going to be talking about how big data is integral to our lives, with or without us realizing it, about sustainability in a very brief way, about 4 companies that most of us would probably have heard of at some point or the other, and how they are redefining our interaction with ourselves and with society at large. Along with that, I'll talk about 4 tenets of ethics for human personhood linked to each of these 4 innovations. And finally, I'll talk about how we as individuals, there was, the moderator talked about how the centralization is giving way to decentralized management systems. So I'll talk about how we individually can contribute in our respective roles to create and sustain these sustainable development goals and further them. I'm happy to take questions. My presentation will be for about 30 minutes. Let me start by talking about big data. Do you know how much data goes around the world every day, every minute? Excuse me. Sorry for that. Just give me a moment. Yeah. So we are talking about, in 2018, for example, the weather was asked by people around 18 million times in every internet minute in 2018. So that is a kind of information transfer that's happening globally. 13 million messages were sent, and 4.3 million YouTubes watched in 1 minute. What does it look like for a day? 0.5 billion tweets, 65 billion WhatsApp messages. Google processes 20 petabytes of data every single day. That's 20 million gigabytes. By 2020, we are going to have a total cumulative data of 44 trillion gigabytes. And by 2025, we are looking at 463 exabytes, or 463 billion gigabytes of data globally. That's the equivalent of 2.1 million DVDs every single day. That's the kind of data we are talking about. OK, a lot of data. Now I'll talk very briefly about sustainability. We as individuals interact with different forms of nature, society around us. We interact with ourselves, our thoughts. We interact with society through our businesses, through our profession, through our families. We interact with the world, with nature, with non-life, and with current focus on external world beyond the Earth. We are looking at pushing the frontiers of space. We are looking at the universe. What does it mean? All this data happening around us and us interacting with the world, what does that mean? Now that we have looked at big data and sustainability briefly, let's talk about 4 innovations and the ethical aspects of it. I'll start with a company called Neuralink. It's an Elon Musk-funded company, which is at the cutting edge of innovation. Their focus is on creating electrodes, very advanced electrodes, which can be pushed into your brain. And it can monitor the thoughts that you have, because end of the day, thoughts are about transmission of voltage through something called neurotransmitters. It's a physical movement of items between different axons, which are part of the neurons in your brain. So we are going to be tracking these electrodes. What does it mean for us? Essentially, it means that for the first time in our life, we have the opportunity to create our own thoughts and control them. This is the image of a probe which can do that. And on the right, you see the axon, and the yellow ones that you see are actually the neurotransmitters which are moving between neurons. So we are talking about a world where something which was natural, thinking, is now going to be controlled by human machines. We are talking about having a chip behind your ear which can control these electrodes and therefore your thinking. Given the kind of changes that we are looking at, what is our responsibility? So I'll introduce the first tenet of human ethics, which is called individuality. Individuality essentially refers to our ability to interact with ourselves. If we have the opportunity to control our own thoughts, imagine what we can do with it in the wrong hands. Of course, in the right hands, we could be looking at curing diseases, we could be looking at improving our thinking, our mental ability, and physical ability. But just imagine if this device, which can actually be connected to an iPhone, could be hacked. What does that mean? It means that we could potentially control other human beings. So therefore, for us, whoever and whenever we are working on these kind of technologies as individuals, we need to ensure that we have a responsibility of managing this information that comes to us. That is the first tenet called individuality. Now I'll move to the next innovation, which is mixed reality. Microsoft has created an innovation which allows you to create a replica of yourself and be present in a different place at the same time. This is not science fiction anymore. Which means I could potentially be communicating with audiences across the globe at the same time, and not even in a language which I can speak because Azure does it for me, the translation. This is the kind of technology that we are managing to influence people. Today, with the advent of media, with the advent of our ability to create new solutions, reach large audiences at the flip of a button, what does this mean for technologies like this? Here I'll introduce a second concept of ethics called sociality, which refers to our communication with society. Human beings are unique in a very different way from animals in the way that they have developed language. We use language to speak to each other and also to express our physical selves. Language and our willingness to think and our willingness to change ourselves differentiates from other animals. What this means is, when we are using technologies like mixed reality with society, we have to understand our social responsibilities and make sure that this is used in a responsible manner. Because our sociality is what allows us to create deeper human relationships. When we are in a crisis, when we are ill, it is not the WhatsApp friend or a Facebook connect which is going to come to your aid. So it's important to understand that even though we have technologies like mixed reality, we need to nurture our relationships around us at work, at families, and our friend circles. Because in the times of distress and crisis, these are what are going to really help us. So while we have this information, we need to be responsible about how we use this information from Azure. The third technology that I'll talk about is Google Tulip. Google has found a way, partnering with Wageningen Institute of Technology, to communicate with plants, and they call it Google Tulip. The idea is to be able to translate human communication and merge it with plant communication and vice versa. So they have actually tapped into a very fundamental source of nature, plant communication. Remember, plants hold the basis for maintaining our genetic code. We would not survive without that species which outnumber us by an exponential measure. However, today we have got in our hands the ability to tinker with nature in real time. That leads me to introduce a third aspect of human ethics, of human personhood, which is called immanence. For 1 second, imagine this wall here, and pick a specific spot on the wall. Now, imagine this as the universe and your position in that spot. That is your unique immanence. The confluence of different factors like the time you're born, the society, the family, the location of the stars, the planets, is unique when you are born. Even if you have a twin, they do not replicate that. So we are given a responsibility to ensure that the uniqueness that we bring to the world, we are able to fulfill the destiny we have. Because that is something that we are alone destined to fulfill. Which means we must work with our daily constraints of personal, professional, and familial requirements to create a basic understanding of why we are here. We all have jobs, we want to make money, we want to live a comfortable lifestyle, give our families a comfortable lifestyle. But understand that today, we as data scientists, as sustainability professionals, we are constantly creating and getting a lot of data which allows us to nurture or destroy nature. Therefore, one request that I have is for each one of you to understand the basic immanence that you are given by virtue of your birth, and nurture that to ensure that when we interact with technologies like Google Tulip, we ensure that there is a moral obligation to act responsibility every day, even if nobody is looking. The final example that I have for you is actually completely out of the world. It's about space travel. Blue Origin, a company that Amazon has built to enable humans to colonize space. And they intend to do that before the turn of half the century. Blue Origin was really like a dream, almost like how Wright brothers had created human flight and how human flight was thought of before they discovered it. The implication is that now we can open new frontiers in space travel and habitation. We no more have to depend on Earth because, in Jeff Bezos' words, it's too polluted. The irony is, we are the ones who have polluted this, and now we are trying to find an escape from that same place. Which really brings me to the final and last tenet of human personhood, which is transcendence. Transcendence derives from the Latin word ascendere and transcendere, which means to go beyond, to surpass. At one level, we need to transcend our current levels of imagination to create solutions like the New Shepherd, because we are looking at space in a way that we have never explored before. But on the other hand, we also need to transcend our minds. We are a unique confluence of our experiences, emotions, feelings, knowledge, and skills in order to achieve excellence, moral integrity, and levels of self-actualization. Our transcendence grounds our ability to dream, to design, to create, to innovate, all those things that we have not yet accomplished. Our transcendence allows us to empower ourselves and people around us for the future, to become what we want to be and what we do not want to be, to define that. We will face several ethical dilemmas in our life as we go on. But what is our contribution as a data scientist, as a sustainability professional, as we go about our daily lives? And more importantly, even if we do realize our responsibility, how do we do that? Which brings me to the last point about how do we match these 4 different levels that we are every day interacting with ourselves, with our families, with the world and the universe, is through sustainable development goals. Now, it's not a silver bullet. They are far from perfect. But they are the best tool we have to understand in a comprehensive manner the problems that face humankind today. A bit of history. In 2012, the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, also known as Rio +20, was held as a 20-year follow-up to the first United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro. That's where the Sustainable Development Goals were born, to collectively identify the future we want. Remember, people, the world that we live in is not the world that belongs only to you or to me. It's a world of 7 billion people. Each one of us has the same right to live on this world. And that is why this is significant, because it was born, the Sustainable Development Goals were born through a consensus of more than 190 countries in the world. So this is the best tool we have today to understand what challenges face us. And therefore, this is what I propose as a simple solution for us to make a difference. Identify one of these 17 goals, does not matter which, but something that appeals to you. Understand what it means, what are the targets, what are the indicators, what exactly is it trying to achieve, and then go back to these 4 levels. Understand you as an individual. How are you contributing to one of these goals? When you are in family, when you are interacting with friends, how does that goal really work out? How can you impact it and make it better? When you are working with technologies which impact the global systems, how is this goal being furthered? Think about who you are, your individuality, your people around you, your sociality, what you are, your transcendence, and what you're going to be, what you've been born with to fulfill your destiny, your imminence. We are not a puppet in the hands of space, time, and motion. We are an individual with the ability to design and change the future for ourselves and our future generations. We can do this by trying to go beyond our immediate needs and convenience and use all the information we have, the big data around us, to create the kind of world that we all want to live in. A world which is healthy, a world which is not about just me, a world which supports your family as well as people that you care about. Either summarize with hope and anxiety. With the explosion of information and communication at our disposal, we are running short of time. Climate change is a reality today, which we see around us through the difference in climatic conditions, through the crises that are before us in the form of weather changes, in the form of floods, famines. So it's real. Our choices will decide not only who we are, what we are, but what we as a collective world can become. And it's up to each one of us individually to decide what information is relevant to us and take that information and use it for the common good. I summarize with a shloka I learned way back in school. Udyamen hi siddhyanti karyani na manorathay nahi suptasya singhasya pravishyati mukhe mriga. Action and not desires lead to outcomes. Just as a lion's prey, such as a deer, does not enter by itself into a sleeping lion's mouth. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great evening.